Today on Comm Talk, we're talking about Lovecraftian fiction and all the interesting things about it.
Glix, what is going on?
We are receiving a signal from a new area on the planet Geekery.
All right, let's see what the planet has for us today.
Opening forms in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Comm Talk by Geek Devotions. I'm Dallas. So glad you guys hit the play button today. We're super excited to have you guys join us for episode 124. With me is my beautiful bride,
Celeste. We're so glad that you have listened to us today. Do us a favor and
that's the outro.
That's the outro. I'm just winging it.
We're just winging it. We're just going to go with it. This is Comm Talk.
This is Comm Talk. We don't cut these things out. People love us for this.
Apparently.
Is this where I talk?
This is where John talks now.
John just jumps in and saves us from our random babbling.
Hey, I'm used to going live on all my shows. I'm like, hey, let's kill this before it starts to grow legs.
It's getting awkward in here. So, John?
I'm just picturing legs like growing, and that's bad.
You should wait till you hear the next couple episodes of Playing Games with Strangers.
Oh, no.
People's legs are growing.
Oh no. Oh man. Well, we're glad to have you here, John. Like I said in our intro, we're talking about Lovecraftian fiction. If you guys don't know, it is Cthulhu-ary here at Geek Devotions.
Cthulhu-ary.
What is Cthulhu-ary, Celeste?
The way you said that, though. Cthulhu-ary is... I don't know what's happening anymore. Cthulhu-ary is the month where we take a look at all Lovecraftian fiction in its many forms, such as books, movies, games,
Anime.
maybe anime.
Yeah. So, but this is partially inspired by our good friend John here.
It was his idea.
It's my birthday month, so I called in some favors. So if anybody's offended by anything this month, I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Send all your hate mail to John at idon'tcare.com. Yeah.
And I will proceed to put that in the round file. Thank you so much for your interest.
Goes to the blue room.
The blue room. Oh my gosh. So John here is our resident Lovecraftian expert, and he's been into Lovecraftian fiction. John, can you define Lovecraftian fiction for us?
Basically, I mean, in its loosest terms, Lovecraftian fiction would be any fiction that would pertain to the creative universe that was set up by H.P. Lovecraft. Some people would refer to it as cosmic horror, or other people would call it strange fiction.
Okay.
Either tag would work for it, but
right.
Usually it involves something to the effect of some sort of forbidden knowledge that ancient civilizations had known and was lost over the course of time, and some modern to the point of the era that the fiction's being written in, individual stumbles across it, or there's some ancient cult that still practices the forbidden knowledge or whatever. But usually the main characters are left in a different state by the end of the story, usually not a good one.
Right.
If anything is left at all, depending on how the story ends, I suppose. So
yeah, there's not a lot of hope in these Lovecraftian fictions.
No. And I think that's really what kind of drew me into it. Not hopelessness, but when you walk into a story knowing that there's a 95 to 99% chance that there's going to be a happily ever after, that it's not really a high stakes situation. You know what I mean? I've made my way through a lot of movies saying, yeah, okay, well, they're not going to put this out there if they're just going to kill off the protagonist, or the situation's going to end up being resolved happily at the end.
Right.
And so for me, H.P. Lovecraft, I mean, things could go either way in any kind of Lovecraftian stories, and half the time the happy ending still isn't that happy.
Right.
So it strikes me as being a little bit more true to reality than standard fiction.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because, we're Christians here at Geek Devotions, and there's when you bring up the conversation of hopelessness, and you bring a conversation of media that is not based in any form of real godliness, because Lovecraft himself was atheist or agnostic.
He was raised as a Christian. He kind of ventured into agnosticism and ended as an atheist.
Right. So, I mean, this guy has very little hope in this guy at all. And then you bring in also vocabulary of cosmic horror. Like, these are all like average Christian listeners, Christians who are out there. They're like, why are you partaking in any of this stuff whatsoever? That's raises some good questions, because there are legitimate things that some people you're opening doors to, and you're legitimately feeding terrible things into your spirit, man. Why, John, do you feel like it's okay for you, because again, I feel like this really is individuals. Why is it okay for you to partake in cosmic horror and stuff that is hopeless?
Well, like I said, it really, it feels more grounded in a realistic. It feels more realistic to me, mm-hmm. I guess. Because sometimes it's, well, for one, let me go ahead and address the question as asked first. I have a mental separation between what I know to be fiction and what I perceive as reality.
Sure.
Same way that, I'm watching cartoons, and, I watch Wile E. Coyote because those Roadrunner cartoons were my favorite. You watch Wile E. Coyote constantly bang his head literally sometimes against a wall trying to catch this Roadrunner.
Right.
His situation is hopeless. He never catches the Roadrunner.
Right.
But we can still find entertainment from it, obviously. And that's what Lovecraftian fiction for me is. It's just another source of entertainment. Granted, it has a little bit more of a bleak tone to it,
mm-hmm.
but not everybody wants sunshine and rainbows for their fiction.
Right.
That's not necessarily everybody's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And my outside of movies and fiction, obviously I'm kind of the music guy here, mm-hmm. and in the Geek Devotions team, there's a Christian band that just put out only one album before they broke up called Outer Circle, and they have a song called It Must Be Wonderful, and the opening verse to it says, explaining time again, the question, the defense, how come he never smiles, why hide your happiness? There's a season to laugh. There's a season to cry. I'm just living my life with respect to my times. Mm. And so basically, so to break it down, why do I feel okay consuming Lovecraftian fiction or cosmic horror? And it's just, it feels more realistic to my perspective of things that I've lived through in life, as far as, things aren't happy all the time. The good guy doesn't always win. And, when I'm reading fiction, if I'm going to get, the good guy wins every time and everybody's happy all after the circumstances, mm-hmm. There's a certain insincerity to it that just irritates me, I guess.
Okay.
And, as far as in contrast to my faith, I don't know. I guess it just comes down to personal convictions. I don't feel convicted about it. I don't feel convicted reading about most fictional things just because I know it's not true.
Right.
Whereas, my only limitations on the fiction that I consume is that, I don't want to watch or read about naked people getting their grind on with each other. That's my line right there.
And so there's the line.
So it may be a situation where, with what Paul's talking about, food that was sacrificed to idols.
Right.
Where if someone has a conviction about it, follow that conviction. If you don't have a conviction about it, partake in it with thankfulness. So yeah, I guess that's my overly thought out response that probably answered nothing.
Well, so here's a question to kind of further that conversation. How do you balance the bleakness of Lovecraftian fiction with the hopefulness that we find in Christ in your life? Because, like, for me personally, I have to, if I'm reading something very dark or very bleak, I have to do other things that are not quite so much, just to keep myself in the right mindset of not just being bleak and grim about everything. So just how do you balance?
And before you do, I want to point this out here too. I have a friend who they definitely deal with some major mental health issues of depression and anxiety and stuff like that. But all they feed themselves, and maybe you'll touch on this yourself, all they feed themselves is these darker and oftentimes over the edge, violent and horror based, and some stuff dealing with the demonic. That's all they consume. They're not in their word. They're not watching. They're not in church very often anymore, and that's all they consumed. And I've seen them get darker over the years. So how do you balance all this stuff out as a fan of the genre and a devoted Christian?
This is gonna sound so edgelord. I live in the bleak, but really, I do a lot of the stuff that I read and listen to and watch. It could all be looked at as being bleak, but I mean, I guess what it just comes down to is that I don't eat just candy. I like candy, but I don't only eat candy. And so it's kind of like with Lovecraftian fiction. I enjoy Lovecraftian fiction, but it's not the only thing that I consume. I read my Bible daily, there's other, when I watch TV, most people would probably think that I watch stuff like, the X-Files or, the Exorcist TV show that's on Fox or whatever. But really, whenever I'm watching TV, I'm just watching food competitions. I mean, that's my jam. I watch a lot of Cutthroat Kitchen, a lot of MasterChef, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not the only thing I consume. And there's other variations of Lovecraftian fiction that it isn't so bleak in and of itself. So, I mean, it's not necessarily just the bleak that brings me to it too. Really, I'm fascinated by the strange and bizarre. Ultimately what it comes down to.
Right.
If there's some fringe on it, if there's something that's just far out there. if there's something that's just like far out there, it's going to attract me to it. And, when we start getting into other Lovecraftian fiction that I enjoy, I'm going to end up talking about, there's some weird stuff out there that deals with these Lovecraftian ideas, but they come from it in such an angle where it's not so dour to the person who's consuming it. So
good example, Howard Lovecraft and the Frozen Kingdom.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, which was just the Geek Devotion that came out on the Tube of Views this week.
It was so cute.
It was fun. There was actually a guy who commented on that on Facebook. He's like, Lovecraftian fiction for kids? I just don't feel like this should exist. I was like, yet it does.
And it's like adorable.
It's like Christian horror movies. It is a thing.
It is a thing.
I think that still trips people out. Like things like Ted Dekker and all those cats. Like I think people legitimately struggle with that. I knew people. I'll put this out there because you've hit it on the nail. I think there's a lot of it. It's the balance of your own personal life. If all you consume is this, yeah, it's bad for you. But sometimes It's not. And some people, they are predisposed to opening doors that are not good for them.
Mhm.
You know, I'm like example, I do not drink alcohol. It's not a thing I do for several reasons. One, I'm contracted under contract not to drink. Two, I come over from a family that has issues with alcoholism and some violent alcoholism. I'm not going to open that door to my family and to what's in my household. So I'm just not going to do that. And there are some things that are legitimately demonic. We are not busting out the Ouija board. I'll let that sucker on fire. You know, but there is a balance in your life of going, are you walking with Christ? Are you reading your Bible? And I think he'll give you some sensitivity for yourself on what to do and not to do. But I had some friends that were so hardcore about this, like anti anything that seemed dark, period. You're gonna laugh at this. I knew a guy who refused to go watch Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Refused to. In fact, he said that it was inappropriate for us to go and support the film, because why would we go to see a film about witches? They're using magic. It's demonic. We shouldn't do it. And
I heard that argument when that movie came out too.
Oh,
and I was like, you do know that it's written by a Christian. It's a Christian allegory. It's like, why does he have to use magic? I really question that this guy really had a faith. I'm like, bro, this is like he's written some of your textbooks.
I'm resisting the urge to choke the air right now. Here's the thing. I'm a respecter of all individual convictions.
Sure.
I believe that the Holy Spirit gives us convictions not because it's across the board wrong to do, but you have convictions because going that route in some way, shape, or form can lead you to doing other things that you ought not to do.
Sure.
So convictions are personal, commandments are across the board. That's my perspective on the topic. It's when people start to try to establish their convictions as commandment for everybody else that I start to take issue. And I am very much against that. And not only am I against that, I'm also against people who do that without even knowing what they're talking about. Ignorance. See, the problem is that the world perceives the church to be people who act in ignorance, that exist on catchphrases and platitudes that they don't even understand themselves. In the whole, I'm trying to do this without bringing up political issues, but I don't know that I can. So I'm going to preface this by saying that Geek Devotions, the comments that are about to come out of my mouth are not necessarily the viewpoints held by Geek Devotions or myself or anybody else involved, and are being used purely for illustrative purposes.
There we go.
That said, I remember reading editorial in a newspaper once where it was where gay marriage was the big topic that was being discussed, and they were discussing it with everybody. Then all of a sudden they had a Christian interviewed on there, and the only soundbite they got from him was, "In the beginning it was Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve."
Oh, I remember that soundbite.
And that was the only and he thought he was pretty clever throwing that out there. I'm like, dude, you have people from the other side of this argument who are giving intellectual, well thought, structured arguments, and you're just going to throw out some stupid idiom that means nothing to nobody and will change nobody's mind using no logic. And that's the way that the world sees Christian thought process when it comes to thinking through why they believe what they believe. So, it just slays me, bringing it back to the topic at hand, when Christians will be like, "Oh, well, you can't be a Christian and enjoy horror," or "You can't be a Christian and like extreme metal," or run down the gamut of how many, especially in Christian geekdom, how many people have heard that. "Oh, you can't like anime and be a Christian," or "You can't be an Uber fan on something and worship God," or whatever, And it's just like, that is so ignorant, because you don't even know what the thing is that you're protesting.
Right.
I mean, if you have a conviction about it, great. I am more than willing to support you within that conviction.
Right.
I love horror films. I do. I know a lot of Christians who are just like, I can't do that. I feel convicted when I watch that. They bother me. I stay up all night. It's like, cool. We don't have to talk horror. What else are you into?
Right.
You know, and we can be cool like that. But then there's some people who just want to step over that line and be like, I doubt your salvation because you enjoy this thing. And it's just
or
like,
on the opposite line where they step across the line, they try to push it, cram it down your throat.
Mhm.
Well, you need to be okay with this because XYZ reason. You know, that's one thing I appreciate about our friendship that we have. Like going to our podcast, The Bottom Shelf, you, me, Branson, and Kevin, we're 4 very different individuals with 4 very different personalities. And we all have our different levels of convictions and things we're okay with and we can't do. And we monitor that for each other. Like, you know, there are films that I just don't do, and you go, all right, let's not do that. And there are films that I'm like, oh man, this would be cool. Well, this won't be good because this bothers John and this bothers Kevin. So we're just gonna put that to the side because we want to find common ground for all of us to work together.
mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna force stuff on you because I love you,
Mhm.
because I care about you. And I think that's the problem, is a lot of people that forget the fact that we love, as Christians, we're supposed to love each other and love others. And so we don't need to be ham-fisting our personal beliefs on other people, because there's a difference between sharing our faith and sharing our beliefs and then ham-fisting it, but also respecting and going, hey, let me walk you through some stuff.
Well, and there's also a difference between, hey, this is a conviction I have, or this is a conviction I don't have, and always being on the offensive about it, or the defensive about it. I'm sorry, I said the wrong word.
Yeah.
Defensive about it.
Now, some people are on the offensive about it.
A lot of people, if they've gotten a lot of flack for something that they are into or something that they are not into, they get immediately defensive
Sure.
when it's brought up.
Yeah.
And that's not how we're supposed to be. So I think if a lot of people took a more calm approach of, hey, this is what I think and what I believe, but I'm going to just leave it at that, that you would have a lot more open conversation with people.
We have a friend who's Calvinist, and he's not like this at all.
No,
Steve
he's
McDonald.
not.
But
We love
a lot
Steve.
of the Calvinists I've dealt with over the years, there's the stereotype of the angry Calvinist. And some of that stereotype stems from them always being attacked by other people for their belief. So they are aggressive in sharing it. And I feel like that's we see that on both sides of the line. You have people they have been attacked for going, this is where I can't do this. And so they're aggressive and just going, you shouldn't do this either. And they're aggressive in sharing it. And at the same time, on the other side, where people in their freedom are aggressive in sharing their freedom instead of considering each other.
I can dig that. I mean, back when I first really got saved, you know, and I was in that mindset for a long period of time after that, where, you know, all I listened to was the extreme metal and all I watched was horror films. And I had a lot of those aggressive conversations with people. And my initial reaction also was to be immediately defensive.
Yeah.
And when I began to become more spiritually mature and exercising a certain amount of discernment, you know, I ultimately had to bring myself to a place of, you know, people have different thoughts on things, and they don't have to be yours, and yours don't have to be theirs.
Right.
It's okay. If they don't dig it, that's fine. You know, find common ground somewhere else. That you don't have to, just because that's your jam, it doesn't have to be their jam. You know, they don't have to be okay with horror films for you guys to get along. You know, just don't bring it up. You know, find common ground. What's your common ground? We both love Jesus. Cool. Let's start with Jesus. Let's focus our relationship on Jesus and move out from there. See where that takes us.
So
and you know, if you keep all your relationships Christ-centered like that, you know, I feel really weird having this conversation right now because we're supposed to be talking about H.P. Lovecraft, but I feel a spirit. But I mean, but real talk though, if you keep all your relationships Christ-centered, you're not going to run into those situations where people are going to be like, I doubt your salvation because you lack whatever, the blah, the blah. Because if the first thing people see is Christ in you, they can't deny that.
Yeah, exactly. So we did kind of go off the rails a little bit, but that's it's
sorry.
Okay,
I'm always more eager to talk about Jesus than I am H.P. Lovecraft. So
and that's all good.
That's balance.
That is balance. So back to topic a little bit, because we've done this a little bit, because it adds into seeing Jesus, what we talk about, what we're dealing with, because sometimes the things we're into people don't like for a variety of reasons. You put out a great article earlier this month for us about because there are reservations about Lovecraftian fiction, not because of just the context of it, but or the content of Lovecraftian fiction, but because of the author of Lovecraftian fiction, the guy who started the genre itself. And you did a great job going through it, talking about how H.P. Lovecraft had some very inappropriate views on people, and how he was very much a racist.
Yeah.
As many people in 1910 were. How do you, as an individual, John, looking at not just Lovecraftian fiction, but any fiction that you take part in as a whole that is not Christian based, how do you separate the fiction and some of the inappropriate ideas of some individuals with what you do take in, like your Christ-centered faith?
I mean,
like when you know that the person behind it, there's individuals who have had some terrible things that they've had to say in the past.
I'm trying, like I have examples, but everybody has an attachment to something, and it's almost impossible not to step on toes when you try to use examples when it comes to entertainment. So if I upset you, I'm sorry, like what you like, but let me dive into this. It's the same way, that I can feel okay listening to the music of Elton John.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He has some beliefs that are not my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
He has some ideals that are not my ideals. I still like his music.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change the music. It's being able to separate the art from the artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, Van Gogh, he was a weird dude.
Picasso was weird too.
Right, but Van Gogh was a very strange dude. He cut off his ear and mailed it to his girlfriend, but we don't judge his art. You don't judge the art based off of the artist.
Right.
You allow the art to stand for itself.
Yeah. We were recently on another podcast called The Beautiful Collision, and the host of it, Dustin, made a great point about the fact that with art and faith, Leonardo and Raphael were amazing Ninja Turtles, but they weren't great Christians, but they did a lot of Christian art.
Mm-hmm.
And we do separate that.
And it's a similar concept. It's like okay, for those of you who are into late 80s, early 90s Christian heavy music, there was a band called Vengeance Rising. You may or may not be familiar with this story.
I'm not at the moment.
Okay, so Vengeance Rising was one of the premier Christian thrash metal bands. I know secular cats who are super into Vengeance Rising, especially their first album, Human Sacrifice. Really? Yes. I had a buddy named Andy Brown he was the one who first told me about Vengeance Rising. He's like, dude, if you get the chance to pick up their Human Sacrifice album, that album is amazing. He's like, I got that, and it stands up to any Slayer album, and yada yada yada. I'm like, cool, dig. Well, I started doing research on Vengeance Rising. After their fourth album, their lead vocalist and only remaining member, Martinez, I can't remember his first name all of a sudden. I want to say Edgar Martinez, but I know that's a baseball player.
You know more about that than I do then.
Roger Martinez. Thank you, Google. He renounced his Christianity and became a Satanist.
Oh man.
So, and I was reading in an earlier edition of HM magazine where somebody was talking about that situation, and they had written in and they had said, when you're trying to introduce your friends to Christian metal and stuff like that, and they hold up, Human Sacrifice or Once Dead or whatever other Vengeance Rising album, what do you take it out of their hand and give them a Mortification album or a Tourniquet album or whatever? And they're like, no, separate the art from the artist, explain to them the situation, that had happened. And yeah, what that guy's currently doing isn't okay, but the lyrics on this album are incredibly appropriate. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and it's the same thing, H.P. Lovecraft, yes, he was a follower of an ideology of the time called eugenics, which, yes, would in turn make him racist. But, his stories aren't all about racism.
Right.
So it's just like separate the art from the artist.
Right. You got to. And because again, if we didn't, there's a lot of things we have to throw out. Most recently, I don't know if you heard about this. Are you familiar with Brady Goodwin, the fanatic?
No, sir.
He's one of the founding fathers of, I call him a founding fathers, one of the founding members of Cross Movement, the Christian rap band rap group.
I'm familiar with the Cross Movement.
Yeah. Fanatic he's big. I mean, he is a main stage individual in the Christian hip hop world, and he recently denounced his faith.
Oh, really?
And it cut me deep, man. I have some of his albums here in the house, but it makes me sad that he's done that. But does what he says today make the truth any less of the truth?
Right.
No, it doesn't. He's still a great artist. The truth was still the truth back then, even if it's another artist now named Truth. But going back, if we were to do the same thing we do with other people, to people in the Bible, David, I mean, he ended up messing up majorly. Do we throw out all the good stuff he did? Do we throw out the Psalms and the Proverbs? One of the Proverbs with the Psalms that he wrote?
Well, the Proverbs, because
the Proverbs were
Solomon, but Solomon was a result of.
Also, Solomon had a bad time too.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, he was good, but he wasn't.
So there is a level of even the scriptures. There's a separation of like, this is who they were. This is the good. This is the bad. This is the ugly, and this is what glorifies Christ all the way through.
I think as long as you acknowledge the bad stuff,
right?
It's not like you go, it's there, but I'm choosing to separate.
Right.
That it's okay. The people who like skim over it and are like, it's okay. That's an issue.
Yeah. Now acknowledging that this is we're talking about H.P. Lovecraft here, who was agnostic or atheist. He had no love for Christ, literally. But at the same time, we do that with so many other things, so many forms of entertainment. There's a lot of people who, man, they are deep into the NFL, and I promise you, the NFL has no love for Jesus.
No.
Say it again for the people in the back, Dallas.
No. I'm purposefully staying off of a soapbox with that.
Well, I mean, it's not just the NFL. I mean, it's anything. You get people who are all into certain clothing lines, and they'll walk around as walking billboards for clothing lines. I guarantee you, Aeropostale has no love for Jesus. Walmart has no love for Jesus.
Well, I mean, let's go apples for apples here.
Walmart needs Jesus. Sorry.
What was that?
Walmart needs Jesus.
Okay, I'm going to step around that soapbox that I could step up on now, but all right. But let's talk apples for apples here. I mean, let's talk about one of Lovecraft's contemporaries. That is praised by literary history. Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm-hmm.
That dude married his 14-year-old cousin. He was a raging drug addict as well as an alcoholic.
Which is probably why some of his stuff is so very bizarre.
So, I mean, but you don't hear people say, oh, you shouldn't read, Edgar Allan Poe because he was a raging drug addict who married his 14-year-old cousin,
Right.
I have, but those people are.
But I mean, it's not as
specific.
predominant as you would hear about.
It's not.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, guys, there's a lot to chew on here in this first segment. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want John to give us some recommendations as a resident Lovecraftian expert here. And John, I'd like for you to give us some recommendations for those who are maybe they're interested in it, but they don't want to get too deep in some of the darker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then also because I know that you also have some examples of some Christian Lovecraftian fiction. So some examples of that. And and so we'll be right back after this commercial break.
This podcast is a proud member of Culture Box. Whether you enjoy geeky reviews, comedy, or original fiction, you can open up the Culture Box and find something excellent for your soul. Point your web browser to culturebox.media.
Okay, and we are back. Check out whoever we promoted in the thing. I don't know who Dallas is going to choose.
I loved that, people. I don't know what you're talking about. They are some
amazing.
They are some of my favorite whatever it was.
So, yeah, we like all the people we play ads for. And I think most of them we actually have a personal relationship with.
Yep, we do.
So, we like them. We're friends with them. Go check them out.
Be friends with them too.
Be friends with them too, because they are cool people. Our friends should be your friends.
And
so
if they're not, you're probably not actually a Christian.
Dang.
Oh, no.
Go back to the front of the podcast, John.
Discussion.
That was the joke. Come on, everybody. I'm being ironic. I'm from Washington State, so obviously I'm a hipster.
Oh, gotcha. Obviously.
Yep. It's a true story.
Anyway, so you're missing your flannel, though.
Am I?
That was a joke. I mean,
maybe it's just tied around my waist right now.
Oh, no, that's a possibility. That is a possibility. Okay, so we're into the section of the show where John's going to be giving us some recommendations of books that...
So many recommendations.
To get into Lovecraftian fiction. Now, I know that you've recommended one for me, and I've started it, and so far I am enjoying it. But what are some other recommendations, or that one? Just, recommendations, go.
I only recommend good things, Celeste. You should know this already.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
That reaction kind of got me curious, but we'll leave that for another day. All right, recommendations. How do we want to branch off these recommendations? Do you want me to just fire them off list-wise, or?
How about give a title, and if it's one that you've read, give us a quick why you liked it.
Okay.
Or why it's a good recommendation for someone wanting to get into the genre.
Okay. Well, the first step in, if you want to dive in on the OG funk stuff, but you don't want to just dive right into dusty old books, I have the Lovecraftian Anthology #1, which is actually comics.
Oh,
it's
cool.
It's a graphic novel of Lovecraftian stories.
Sweet.
So if you want to kind of dip into the Lovecraft but satisfy your comic book cravings, that'd be the way that I would dip into it. Especially when a lot of Lovecraftian stuff, he describes the creatures as being undescribable.
That's very unhelpful.
It's undescribable. Let me draw that.
And then, but for the purists out there, it's a little bit expensive, but I recommend it. It's the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft. You can buy all his stuff in one collected book. It's, just over 1,000 pages long.
Oh, wow.
but it has everything by him in it.
So some light reading.
I feel like that's more than what, because Barnes & Noble has a Lovecraft collection that's a special case together.
It's in a very nice leather bound book.
That was what I was looking for when I was shopping for it, but I came up with this one, and they both have the entire collection in them. So, you know, whatever's clever.
Yeah.
One that's Lovecraft light, more on the forbidden knowledge and what actually is reality, less on the there is no God, there is no hope concepts, is a book that I highly recommend to anybody want Lovecraftian fiction, or just a really good book that has an incredibly mind-bending plot to it. It's called Night Film by Marisha Pessel. For those of you at home, we are on video doing this, and I'm showing pictures of the covers. I just happened to accidentally get a signed copy of it.
Nice.
That's fun. I've heard of things like that happening.
And it's got a little sticker that says signed copy. I had originally bought that book as a birthday present for my sister, because we have a tradition where when it's her birthday or Christmas, I will do two things. I will buy her a Barnes & Noble gift card so she can get a book for her Nook, and then I will buy her a book that I think she should read. And I originally bought this for her, and then I saw that it was a signed copy, and I said, nope, this is mine now. And I ended up buying it again for her.
All the books belong to me.
Hey, you know, if you get an autographed version of a book that you sincerely enjoy,
right,
you're probably not going to give that away if you don't already have one.
Probably not.
Let's see here. What else? I think okay, so there is a series, a 3-book series so far. There's going to be more in the future. That I highly enjoy. Language wise, it can be rough for some people, because it's a lot like what you would expect from a book that would be entitled Harold and Kumar Meet Cthulhu.
What?
Oh,
that's not the actual name of the book, but I mean that's the kind of like, that's what you can. I just broke Celeste.
No, I'm just picturing this.
But that's the kind of story that you're in for when it comes to this book series. But it's written by an author using the pen name David Wong.
Right.
And the first book is called John Dies at the End, and it's called the John Dies at the End series, but none of the rest of them are called that. It's John Dies at the End. The second book is Full of Spiders. And then the third book is called What the Hell Did I Just Read?
Ah.
I mean, at least it sets the expectations.
It does, but it's one of those books that is so absurd. It cycles back around to being intelligent again.
Mm-hmm.
So
you had recommended the John Dies at the End. I think that the author actually is no longer going under the pen name, because when I was looking for it, I was like, this is not David Wong.
I don't know. I don't know that I don't know.
If you Google it and it doesn't say David Wong, but it is called John Dies at the End, it's probably the same book.
I can tell you, don't watch the movie. The movie is trash.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I enjoyed the movie until I read the book, and I realized how much they left out and how much better it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is why you always watch the movie first, so that you can enjoy the movie, and then you have so much more extra content when you read the book.
So
that's fair.
So there's that series. As far as if there's people out there who are specifically only read Christian literature, that's fine. I talked to my good buddy Steve McDonald, who is everything I want to be as a Christian.
Right.
And he recommended 2 authors George MacDonald, no relation, and then Charles Williams. I've not read anything by either of those authors myself, so this is completely coming from Steve. I can't validate them with my own opinion. There is an author whom I used to be friends with on Facebook, and I say that only because we haven't talked to each other for several years, not because we're specifically not friends with each other anymore. His name is Tom Pollock. He wrote 2 books. The first was Vanish. And the second was the sequel to Vanish, which was called In the Valley of the Shadow. Both of those are fantastic. And actually, if you are a fan of playing games with strangers, and you heard the episode that has been dubbed as my birthday episode, which is a episode where we do a Call of Cthulhu format,
right?
There are large ideas that I pulled out of Vanish that I used in that episode. I can't recommend those books enough. As soon as I get that book as soon as Vanish got its hooks into me, I think I read it over the course of 3 days. Just,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Could not stop reading it, because you think it's one thing and it turns out to something else. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then they made a sequel and it's like, And then finally, for more famous authors that people would recognize, I would throw out Showdown by Ted Decker.
Okay.
That has a lot of not Cthulhu, a lot of Lovecraftian feels to it as well, with things of forbidden knowledge and what actually is reality versus perceived reality, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Good times.
Cool.
So
Was that enough recommendations? You want me to keep going?
I think it's good, man.
Movie wise, there was a movie that came out recently that I just loved to pieces that was based off of an H.P. Lovecraft story called The Color Out of Space, which is starring Nicolas Cage. And
I've been told about that.
If you want to hear a review on it, me and Ben Avery did a review over on Strangers and Aliens. So go ahead and check that episode out if you want to hear more about it, or just go watch it. I will put a disclaimer at the beginning of it, because that is a Lovecraft based story. It's bleak and grim. So I would say if you were bothered by seeing The Thing by John Carpenter, I can't believe I spaced his name. If you're bothered by seeing The Thing by John Carpenter, probably not going to be your jam. But if you dig John Carpenter's The Thing, have at it. You're going to love that movie.
Really? Interesting.
I'm glad to hear a different recommendation, because the person that we know that has been talking about it, I don't always agree about movies with.
Right.
So it's nice to hear a second.
I will say for you, Celeste, because I know you personally, you will probably like the sci-fi in it.
Oh, yeah.
But have another upbeat movie to watch after you watch that movie.
Gotcha. So not a right before bed movie.
No.
That's like we've been watching when we were prepping for Cthulhu, we've been going through on HBO Max Lovecraft Country. Oh. And that's
I wish I could watch that.
Yeah. Yeah. We had one episode that we were like, oh, and that might have been the last episode we watched. But it's super dark. And so it's like, okay, we're going to watch this, but now we're going to watch Bleach before we go to bed.
The book for Lovecraft Country, fantastic. I will say that the HBO series adds certain things to it that aren't in the book. So that being said, the book, fantastic. I actually want, at some point when I'm not afraid of him, I actually want to have Carlos read that book, and I want to have a discussion with him.
Well, there you go. Mr. Carlos Renfro, you have been requested.
Carlos, if you're listening, I love you, man. It's nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, and I don't know you well, and I'm afraid of people I don't know.
You literally said it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's my broken brain. But yeah, Lovecraft Country by Matt Huff, I believe, is who wrote that. Fantastic book. Can't recommend it enough. It also, another reason to listen to that is because there is so much backlash on Lovecraft being racist. That book actually is what you would call anti-racist because it comes completely from a black perspective.
Yeah.
Which another story, which I believe Michael I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Minacci?
Yes, Michael Minacci. Sorry, Mike. He read a recommendation I gave him called The Ballad of Black Tom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also a fantastic story for Lovecraftian fans.
Nice. Very cool.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's our episode for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Obviously, John here is part of our Geek Devotions team, but you can find him other places such as Playing Games with Strangers and also The Bottom Shelf.
I love how you said Playing Games with Strangers, almost singing the melody as you said it.
Right. I was having to stop myself from breaking into the theme song because the theme song is so catchy.
That song's a bop.
It is a bop.
It is a bop. So, all right. So, anything we need to announce?
Check out our merch.
Check out our merch.
We have Cthulhuary merch, and it's so cute.
Yep, it's true. We have a mug up on the store that you guys can get.
We do, and hopefully soon we will have a shirt, but not right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, cool beans. Well, Celeste, land the plane.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Comm Talk today. If you have loved this episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It is very much appreciated. So until next time, stay devoted.
Peace and love.